Elizabeth, how many marriages are you allowed to have in your life?
I figure, like, it's the Elizabeth Taylor rule, right? Like,
What?
I feel like you can, like, equal Elizabeth Taylor but go no further.
8?
So that's 8 marriages to 7 people. That's the rule. That's where
That's
we have that's the end point,
So
right?
someone comes along and they're oh, hi, yeah, this is my 5th wife.
No,
You're like,
that's fine.
That's fine,
That's
you're
fine.
in clear,
Yep.
but 9th is pushing it.
No, I don't make the rules. Elizabeth Taylor did. Like, she set the standard. We're all just living in that
But
world.
what about when someone sets a new standard?
Well, look, I think we can adjudicate that when it happens, but
It might not ever happen.
I think 8 marriages to 7 people sounds just fine to me.
And that's fine.
How many do you think?
5. You
5?
call 8 is ridiculous, I think.
Okay.
I'm calling it at 5.
Okay, cool.
And then I'm not coming to your 6th, 7th, 8th wedding.
Oh, that's disappointing. Well, I got to find 5 people to marry so that you
Yes.
don't turn up at my 6th
Yes.
wedding then, Tom.
And then
Welcome to Ghosts of Boyfriends Past. I'm Liz Best.
Tom Harris here, pondering as ever.
And we are sitting in our replacement studio at new producer Scott Driscoll's house. Stand-in, temporary,
Yes.
but nonetheless very awesome. Thank you, Scott, for helping us out while Uncle Zane is sick.
We are in temporary digs, but charging ahead with a lot of energy as always. And you join us on a main episode of Ghosts of Boyfriends Past, where we bring a guest on and they have a bit of a natter about a relationship gone by. We have some rules. Do we want to do rules or actually introduce the guest?
Our guest
Yeah,
first
bring
and
them
then
on.
do the
Come on.
rules. So I sent Krystyna a message to say, look, how do you want me to introduce you? And Krystyna's she's what she's described herself as an ex-corporate chick. So there's a lot of like very corporate bios, but we decided on serial entrepreneur, thrice married and twice divorced, Krystyna Weston. Hello.
Come on down.
Hello to you both. So nice to be on the show. Thank you for having me after we had you on one of our podcasts.
Yes, that's right.
Yes, which
So
was
it
lovely.
great
That was Every Step
great to
podcast.
have that reciprocity.
Yeah, look, I really enjoyed your podcast. If you ever want to have me on again, I would be happy to.
Definitely.
The Every
Very
Step
happy to.
podcast.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, so definitely check that out. We'll put some links to that in the show notes. Krystyna, thrice married, twice divorced. How many marriages do you reckon we're allowed?
As many as it takes to figure your stuff out. Because
Yeah,
that's
love it.
The
pretty
limit does
much
not exist. Okay.
Like, you keep making the mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And it's not until you do the work and figure out what's causing the problem, because the common denominator is me.
Yeah.
You.
Yeah, sure.
That's the common denominator, right?
Elizabeth Taylor is the common denominator. So today, look, we'll go through the rules because we haven't really done it for a little while, just in case there's new listeners
Yes.
listening to the podcast who've come on and think, well, there's no rules on this podcast. You would be wrong. We have rules. So normally when we get a guest on, we ask them to use an alias for the people that they're talking about, if possible, just so that we're not really doxing anybody.
Well, that would be rule 2. If you figure out who Krystyna's talking about today, no doxing, no sharing of email addresses, phone numbers,
No
please.
armchair Columbos, please. That's
No.
not what it's about. We're about learning lessons from relationships gone by. We're not about tattling on anybody. And
You
then
get
that
revenge
goes...
on your own time, not my time. Thank you.
And that's the other rule. No threats on mic, Krystyna. Once we stop recording, all the threats you like, but no threats on
All
air.
of this is ancient history now, so I think it's kind of
Perfect.
Right.
kind of speaking from wisdom with lots of retrospection. It's not
Right.
raw, so I think.
Don't worry, Krystyna.
There's no anger and resentment. It was all my shit in the first place, right?
All of our guests get the same rules. We didn't see your face pop up on Zoom and go, oh, geez, better bring out the no threats rule. Oh, boy. So you're all clear there.
So, Krystyna, what story have you come to tell us about today?
Well, I think the thing that connected us when you came onto our show was my second marriage, which was a marriage that happened very, very fleetingly, and it ended as quickly as it started.
Right.
And I thought I had done some work on myself, but gee, I was wrong. I was so wrong. And I've been watching that series. Have you guys been watching the series Fake?
I binged it all. I binged it in a day and a half, Krystyna.
What is the
Horrified.
show?
Oh my God.
Horrified.
Like, you think like that, I just watched that series, and that is sadly, that is real life.
For the really handsome and intelligent readers who don't know what you're talking about, what's the show about?
There's this show in Australia, it's on Paramount Plus at the moment, called Fake. It's got Asha Ketty and David Wenham in it.
Okay.
And it's about this woman who goes on a date with a man, and she's not super keen, but he is super keen. And her family are like, don't fuck this one up again. So she kind of gives him way more chances than she's supposed to. Like, honestly, there are things he did on that first date that I would have been absolutely not. Never.
And she did not read the red flags. She did not listen to her gut.
And she got swept up and ignored a lot of her gut feelings because of this love bombing and this... I had chills down my back, Krystyna, watching that whole thing. I just had this overbearing sense of dread that made me want to throw up a little.
That was me.
Oh, no. Okay.
That was me.
Well, let's hear the story, because people who haven't seen the show need to know.
You've got to watch the show, and I think if you've lived the experience, you see so much of yourself in the actress or the role that Asha Ketty plays. She's smart, she's intelligent, she's got to act together, but she's insecure.
Yeah.
And now with 18, 20 years of retrospection, that was me. You know, I was super successful. I was, I'm 5'10", so I walk into a corporate room and I was a presence. I was intimidating. I was ambitious. I kind of thought I had my act together. I had one marriage under my belt, and I think I know I was still carrying a lot of unresolved stuff about working my own stuff out. I'd been in a lovely man, but because of my insecurities, I was controlled in terms of what I wore and who I was able to hang out with. And there was sort of in a nice way, it was really subtle, because the man who was the father of my child is a fairly decent human being, but also insecure in his own way. So I had a lot of unresolved stuff, having left that marriage, and I'd kind of come onto the dating scene. I had a young child. I was a single parent, and I was doing the whole RSVP thing, and I wasn't getting anywhere. I had a big job. I had a house that was paid off. I had my act together financially, and in terms of corporate presence, I really had my act together, but I didn't have my emotional shit together at all. And I can say that now with the benefit of hindsight. So there I was, RSVPing, doing all the whole bit. And I meet this guy, a little bit like the character that Asha Ketty plays. I met him and I didn't vibe with him.
Did you meet him in person or online? Sorry, Krystyna, did you meet him in person or online?
I met him in person, I met him in a bar in Sydney. I was living in Sydney at the time. I met him in a bar in Sydney, and I didn't really vibe. Tall, good-looking guy, also single parent, had a good job. I was more financially successful than he was. I had way more money than he did, more assets than he did. He was a little bit older than me, not much, a couple of years. And I didn't really vibe with him, and I should have listened to my gut, but for a whole bunch of reasons, I didn't, and that's why I have so much empathy for the Asha Ketty character. It's there's a whole bunch of stuff that plays into that. It's first of all, there's a I'm not good enough story running. Then there's I fall in love with people that vibe with me, and I don't really make a decisive choice about who I'm with. They choose me, and then I kind of go along with it. So I never really made a decisive choice. It was he kind of pursued me, and I kind of fell in love with him being into me. It was whirlwind. We were engaged within 6 months. I was selling my house really quickly. I was buying a house with him, and he had very little money. He was selling his apartment, and my family was saying to me, aren't you moving a little too quickly? And I was going, no, I kind of met his family, and I come from an Eastern European, my heritage is Polish, and his background also had connection with my kind of heritage, and I met his parents and it felt like coming home. And I thought, even though there were some red flags, I kind of felt like I was being with someone that was kind of from that same family background, and that was really quite seductive at the time. But things moved super, super quickly. We were married very, very quickly.
So from meeting to marriage, what time span are we talking?
7, 8 months, 9 months.
That's quick.
It was really fast.
It was fast, yeah.
We broke up super quickly. The marriage ended within months.
Wow.
But because I was trying to be savvy in some ways around things, so I put a binding financial agreement in place and trying to protect myself financially. Come back from the honeymoon, and there's an email from my lawyer saying he hasn't signed the binding financial agreement.
Ooh, dear.
Oh, no.
It was okay. I mean, I wasn't scammed as a result of him, but I kind of challenged him on it when we came back from the honeymoon, and it was all turned on me. Of course it was turned on me. Don't you trust me? You don't trust me. I then learnt not long after that he had a drug problem that he'd concealed from me. He'd done a lot of drugs from a very, very early age, and I've done a lot of research on it since. And when you do drugs in your sort of puberty years, it really, really messes with your emotional receptors. It massively messes with your emotional receptors. And this guy wasn't all together. I look back now and I go, wow, I had no boundary management. I didn't listen to my gut. I fell in love with someone who fell in love with me. I wasn't really at choice. I didn't really make a choice.
Were you?
I just kind of fell into it.
Were you doing that thing we all do, where you look at green flags and you take the green flags on board, but totally disregard red flags? You go, yep, I don't want to know about that or that, but I'll take this, and this, please. We sort of deny it, lie to ourselves.
And my parents wrote me a letter, being really kind of diplomatic. Don't you think you're rushing it? Don't you think you're going a little too? Take your time. I did not want a bar of it because I'd been single for it. You know, I'd struggled to kind of find relationships, struggled to kind of be with someone. I thought there was something flawed with me. Running this "I'm not good enough" story, trying to prove to everyone that I could sustain a relationship. And he was my kind of, use the expression like my John the Baptist kind of moment. He was the trauma that I needed to get me to look at my stuff and to work out who I was and to heal my wounds and my emotional pains that were holding me back from truly being an equal in a relationship and deserving an equal in a relationship.
So, Krystyna, when you look back now, what are some of the red flags that you missed at the time, do you think?
Or denied to yourself, or covered up?
I didn't listen to my gut first. He didn't have many friends or any friends. He had no
Huge.
friends.
That is a huge red flag
Gotta
to
have
me.
friends.
It happens a lot, and they're like, oh yeah, he spends a lot of time with me because he doesn't really have very many friends. And if you are like, I don't want to be someone's everything. They need to have a life outside of me. Otherwise, they're going to end up ruining my own orbit, I guess. Yeah.
So other things, there were some big ticket items that today I laugh thinking back. He was really into, and I won't name the company because I know we've got this rule going here. He was doing these psychological programs that in the day really messed with you. They were big programs. They were multi-level marketing, psychobabble, and I've done a lot of work on my since. I've actually trained in counselling and therapy and a whole bunch of things. So I now look back and see what that was. And it was quite evil stuff, and it kind of messed with you. You go into big rooms with lots of people, they mess with the temperature, they keep you going for many, many hours on end. They want you to choose between chocolate and strawberry, and they tell you all about your rackets. And anyone who has done any of these programs, I'm going back 15, 20 years now, will know what I'm talking about. They're dangerous. They're really dangerous. And he was very much into this cultish environment. And he said to me, I speak French. I've done this course. And unless you learn to speak French, I can't be with you. And at this point, I was so desperate to be accepted that I did this frickin' course. And it was destroying it. I mean, I'm sure it works for some people, and I'm sure it's worked for some people, but I look back now with all my counseling knowledge, and it was a horrendous thing to do. So that was another really big flag. There was so many things. My friends didn't like him.
Yeah, that's probably a common one that comes across our desks, where you're lying to yourself so much, but the people that you love and are dearest to you, the closest people to you, are saying, no, well, this isn't good, and you're just going, no, it's fine, it's nice. I denial.
Did you cut any of those friends out to stop the awkwardness? Did you?
Yes, one or two, and I watch Fake, and it's like, not so much what he did to the actress, the role that Asha Ketty plays, but to somebody else, and said, look, you shouldn't be with that person because this person is bad news. So some really close friends, he kind of poisoned me around those close friends, about those close friends. And those close friends had their own challenges, and they were special in their own way. So there was one level that I could see it. But I think it was very, very damaging, because these people, and I'm sure this is a common theme, they try and isolate you. Mm-hmm. They try and isolate you. And it happens, listeners, it happens to smart, successful women. Like, it happens to those of us that are doing really well. It's not just the idiots and those that aren't paying attention. It happens to the smartest of women.
It happens so slowly, and it's so insidious. And I think this is one of the things that we bonded over when I was talking on Every Step. But my partner at the time would do things that were slightly offensive, so that my friends were like, I don't really want to spend time with them, and then he'd say, your friends don't really like me, so let's not spend time with them. And it wasn't
horrible.
A decision that I ever made to cut anybody out. I was like, oh, well, I feel awkward when they're in the room together, so I have made the decision to not put them in the room together, without realizing that I had actually then isolated myself from my support network, because I was like, well, I have made this decision, no one else has made it for me, but he made it so that I couldn't feel comfortable with them in the same room together.
It happens little bit by little bit, and it's like being a frog in a boiling pot. The pot starts off cold, and by the time you're dying, you haven't noticed, because it's the little bit by little bit by little bit, and they're little tiny compromises.
You never make a huge compromise. You make 10 tiny ones, and then you look back and go, shit, I don't even know where the starting line is anymore.
Where is Krystyna?
Yeah.
Where is Krystyna? I remember there was a birthday party not long into the marriage, and he made a huge scene at this Japanese restaurant. We went back to our home, and our family were there, and I was curled up in the fetal position in the kitchen, wailing. And I look back now and I go, my God, I was a CEO, I was a senior executive, I was earning good money, I had my life together. I didn't have my emotional life together. There I was, a cripple in the corner, wailing in the fetal position, because I couldn't do, no matter what I did, it was wrong. Yes. Everything I did in this relationship was wrong. And he beautifully, beautifully played into what was my then I'm not good enough story.
That's exactly what they do. They basically get to a situation where, they know what your insecurities are, and so they say them out loud. They say the thing that you would never want to hear out loud. And because it's something that you think about yourself already, you go, oh no, someone's found out the thing that I fear the most. And it's actually not true. They just recognize what button they need to push and push it. Krystyna, did any of this bleed into your work life at the time?
The people around me knew what was going on, but I'm quite different now. I wore a mask. Yep. And I was very, very corporate and very on at work. Mm-hmm. And then I had two different personas. I had the work persona, and I was in a very serious kind of financial services job. And then I had my personal persona. Those identities have blurred. Look, I'm sure it did, but I was a lot younger then, and I was able to keep the mask on. Mm-hmm. I was very, very good at wearing the mask.
But did that then pressure cooker because you had to suppress so much, did that mean that it exploded a bit more behind the scenes?
Oh, of course. I didn't have the time for my daughter. I might have been more frustrated with my daughter. It wasn't great on her. The man I was in a relationship with also had a young child who was also a problem in the relationship, and there was a very, let me just say, unnatural relationship with those two. Mm-hmm. And my daughter was very isolated at the time. She was in her early teens, and she did the usual what early teens do, kind of disappeared into her bedroom and kind of stayed away. Yep. And I lost that bond with my daughter during that time because I was so desperate to make this relationship work, which was kind of the most important thing in my personal life, that I'm sure it played out in the way my daughter was. Fortunately, end to end, it was only a 12, like from the time basically I met him, from the time that it was all over, was probably about 12 or 14 months. So lucky it didn't go on for a long time. But it was the most horrendous 12, 14 months of my life.
So what broke it?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
What was the straw that broke the camel's back?
Do you know what? When we came back from the wedding and I said to him, you didn't sign the binding financial agreement, that was the beginning of the unraveling.
Mm-hmm. Because you weren't giving him what he wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it took a few months to kind of play that out. He ended up signing it, and I didn't lose any money, and it was all, it was all okay in the end. But that was the beginning, and he just wore me down so much emotionally that I think I just got to a point of almost a breakdown and said, enough.
That's so great that you were able to say enough, though, because a lot of people would just break and then reform themselves in whatever the partner wanted them to be to make it easier.
No, absolutely. And
I think I was lucky in that I had financial power, and I don't think we should underestimate that. I held the financial power in the relationship, and if it had been the other way, I'm not sure if I'd have extracted myself as quickly, because also there's an enormous amount of shame attached to a failure like this. I mean, I'd already had one marriage, one divorce, and here I was against not everybody's, but a lot of people saying, are you sure? And then I rush into this, and then I'm coming out the back end, a zombie, an emotional zombie. There was a lot of shame attached to it. So I was getting physically unwell. And it was, and he wasn't, and I wasn't, I stopped playing the game with him.
And so what happened when he realized that he had no power over you anymore?
He wasn't particularly happy when it was ending, and I remember there was still all this power. There's all this psychobabble stuff. Like he brought, we liked to cook. He liked to cook. One of our first dates, he cooked, and he had a special knife set that was really, really important to him.
Sure.
And when we separated and he moved out, one of the first things I packed up was the knife set. And he was sending me emails saying, how dare you give back, how dare you stab me with these knives.
Oh, God.
And, it was all of this. And I look back now and I remember spending time with a girlfriend crafting emails back to him. But I didn't have the knowledge or the emotional intelligence or the boundary management to go, mate, just F off, you're a lunatic.
Just send him a photo of your finger.
Yes,
that's all.
Right.
Go.
Yeah.
But he was holding on until the end. And I remember speaking to one of his family members who was a psychiatrist or a psychologist. And I kind of got to understand that when you do it, because he started doing, the more things deteriorated, the more he was doing drugs secretly. And the more it was messing. The more you do things like marijuana and other things, for him, it messed him up a lot. And I realized that I actually wasn't dealing with a whole human being. I was dealing with somebody that wasn't fully functioning at an intellectual and an emotional level.
Krystyna, I'm curious as to your friends and family members, because you said at the beginning and during leading into a wedding, they wrote you letters, they talked to you and were like, hey, how about this? What were those same people like with you at the end when it all wrapped up? How did they come back to you?
I have the closest relation. My father has since passed away, but my mother and I have been close forever. She's amongst my best friends. And it was almost relief because they were there at that birthday party when I was curled up in the kitchen after having had this whole blue. They were my rocks. And fortunately, because he'd isolated me from other friends, it hadn't bled out to a bunch of other friends. It's like, oh, you've been missing for 12 months. Welcome back.
Yeah,
So it hadn't gone on long enough. And, a bunch of others said, well, thank God you've now realized, welcome back. Thank goodness, you're back. I'm sorry you didn't see it earlier. And I very quickly started to see counsellors and really started to work on myself. And I think I have a lot to be grateful. Whilst it was a horrific episode in my life, I have an enormous amount to be grateful for, because if not him, then I wouldn't have done the work.
Yes.
I wouldn't have tried to understand why I was the common denominator and what it was about me, and heal some of my wounds. And it wasn't until I did that I was actually ready for someone to accept me for all that I am. I'm a strong person. People have said to me, "Oh, Krystyna, she's scary," because I had a senior role. I had a lot of stuff going for me, and I wasn't ready to embrace all of that. And I wasn't ready to meet someone that would see me for who I am, because I was still caught up in this. I'm not good enough. I'm flawed. I'm not good enough.
And so, Krystyna, what was the amount of time between ending this marriage, doing the work, and finding your current partner?
Ooh, 10 years.
That is a lot of work.
I actually had met, what is quite funny is that I'd met my now husband before I married number 2.
Oh, no.
Aha.
But he had only just come out of his marriage. And I wasn't ready to be rebound girl. So I kind of went, you go and do your work. And I'm not, and he had 2 young children at that time, and I didn't want to be stepmom to 2 young children in addition to mine. So
you rebounded yourself instead.
He had his own parallel story. He married a psycho chick.
Oh, good.
So we both had to do our work for us to actually find each other again after we'd done the work individually.
I love that.
There's kind of a universal sweetness to that. There's a kind of a cosmic kind of, well, we could have ended up, our orbits came close, and then you swung back out into the dark.
Timing is everything. This is what I have said a million times, is that I don't think it's an age difference. I think it's a life stage difference. Yeah. And if you are not ready to be together, then it can't work. I think timing really is everything when it comes to relationships. It really is.
It is. And emotional readiness and being ready to truly be in relationship, because relationships aren't easy. Let's face it, they're not easy, right? Even the best relationships are not easy. And it's important to have that respect, but it's important to know who you are. It's important to have boundary management. It's important to be able to ask to have your needs met. It's important to be able to have difficult conversations respectfully and still come out of it. You know, relationships aren't a walk in the park. Like every relationship, the best relationships take work.
And that's the same for friendships as well as romantic relationships as well. I think it all results in, you know, work. You have to decide to, you know, choose that person to be in your life and to make sure that you're both, I guess, giving each other what you need to exist independently and together. Krystyna, what are some of the biggest lessons that you have learnt from this second marriage?
Well, first of all, for me to make a choice myself. Don't just fall into a relationship because they choose you. So really look at, are they meeting what you need? Because it's so easy to be seduced. I think that's probably the biggest thing for me. I fell in love with people that fell in love with me or that picked me. I'm not even sure they were in love. To be honest, I don't actually believe they were in love with me. I think they had their own stuff going on, but they picked me. And that was very, very seductive. Because growing up and a whole bunch of stories, I always felt a little bit on the outer. So when somebody picked me, that was so powerful. So it's like make a purposeful choice yourself. Like be really clear, is this person right for me? Are my needs being met? Do I respect them? Do my friends like them? Are they kind? How are they with their children? What's their relationship like with their family? So there's so many things I look back on now. And don't let them control you. I just fell into being controlled because I wanted to be accepted. So it's that boundary management piece. I had very, very few personal boundaries because my need to be loved was greater than that. I suppressed all my needs. I became a chameleon. Tell me what you want me to be. I'll be what you want me to be. Just love me.
And it's easier than walking around on eggshells. Like you just do what they would like because you're like, well, it's no great hardship to me. And next minute you don't recognize who you are because there's so many small, not great hardships. One of the things I've learned just from listening to your story, Krystyna, is that you mentioned a little further back that you were crafting emails with your friends about how to talk to this man. And I think that one of the big lessons is that these type of people, it doesn't matter what you say to them, they're going to find a way to twist it back on you. So the best thing to say is nothing at all.
I couldn't agree with you more, and that is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
That is precisely what happened.
Because you will run yourself in knots. You will run yourself in knots trying to come up with, you'll be like, well, if I say this, then he's going to say this because I know that he thinks this. So if I say it in this way, then maybe he'll say it that way and then maybe he won't come back to me. Absolutely not.
And even further than that, they're winning because they're getting your time, your attention, even if they don't come back and hit you with the words that you supplied, they're still sort of winning the war, right?
Yeah.
So true. They're sapping, they're energy vampires.
Yeah.
They're sapping your energy.
My wee little lesson learned for all the lovely readers listening to this around the globe would be listen to your friends and family when they come to you and say, hey, this in your life, this person.
That might hurt. It might hurt to listen to them, but...
we're all wonderful. Us human beings, we're wonderful at going, No, that doesn't apply to me. I don't listen to logic or reasoning.
They don't
or people
understand.
No, you
They're
don't.
not in the relationship. They know you better.
You know, if someone's known you for 30 odd years and they come, and not even about a relationship, anything, they go, hey, we need to talk about how you smell, you should probably go, all right, what have you got to say? At least hear them out, right?
Yeah.
At least hear them out, and they might make some good points that end up saving you a marriage or smelling in work or whatever it is. So yeah, when someone wants to sit you down and have a chat, just listen, maybe. Just try. I know it's hard.
And look, even if you don't take it all in, then have a think about it the next day.
Yes.
If you can't hear it at the time, just go, hang on a minute. And then if you still don't really want to take it on board, maybe take it to a friend and say, hey, my mum said this. What do you reckon? And if more than one person says it, then maybe it might start to get through. I know that when that happened to me, I didn't listen to anybody, right? But when it came time for me to think back on what I should do about the future of our relationship, all of the voices started replaying in my head. All of the comments, all of the emails, all of the, do you think you maybe isn't right for you? And that's what helped me get out. I may not have listened at the time.
Correct. And that's what happened to me. I was deaf. I knew better than anybody.
Yeah.
They, as you said, I was the one in relationship. They didn't know. I listened to nobody. But you're so right. It was after that. It was like, yeah, why didn't I listen?
So if you are a friend in a situation, right, or a family member, and you see one of your loved ones in a relationship that is not ideal for them, say the thing. They might not listen to you at the time, and don't sit there and try and force them to end it, but think of yourself as the voice of reason that's going to come back to them when they need it most. Because I think that's so often what happens, is that they go, well, you're not listening to me, so I'm ignoring it and I'm not going to say anything more. Say the thing, because eventually it will get through. It just might take a little bit of time.
No, very, very wise. And everyone as a collective, we thank Krystyna for coming on the Wee Show today and sharing her story. Fascinating insight. Is it plugs galore for Krystyna?
Krystyna, podcast. Do you want to plug your podcast, or do you want to plug? You can plug whatever you like.
Oh, plugs galore. Well, thank you. So Judith Beck and I have a podcast that you, Liz, have been on called Every Step, and we explore all things career and life. And tune into Every Step podcast.
Wonderful. And we will have links to that podcast in the show notes, because we want you all to listen. And look, if you haven't listened, the episode that I'm on we talked about love at work, because that's how I met Judith, is that we were both on SBS's Insight talking about love at work, and my relationship that nearly exploded my career. That was a fun time. Fun time for everybody.
No sex at work.
No sex at work. No, it's bad. Don't do it. It's not worth it. In the meantime, if you have any stories, you can write to us at ghostofboyfriendspast@gmail.com. If you have written to us and haven't received a reply, check your junk mail, because I reply to 99.999% of all people, unless you send us spam.
Yep.
So I will have replied. Just double check your
Sit
mail.
down with your friends, sit down with your family and say, look, I really think it's time for you to listen to Ghosts of Boyfriends Past.
Yep.
You know, have that heart-to-heart with them. Make them listen.
Make them listen to our podcast for their own good. Krystyna, thank you so much.
Yes.
It's been so wonderful chatting to you. And if you guys want to share any of your stories about similar relationships or completely different, any time when love has kicked your ass and you've learned a lesson, please get in contact, because we absolutely want to hear from you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.